I still think the week that Alabama and Tennessee lost at the same time is the craziest week of the season. But man, NFL and college this week was insane. Oh yeah, and also, the swag is back, baby. Obviously, I do have the BYU shirt and the Falcons hat just to prove a point. Anyways, welcome back to episode 27 of Grizzly Talks Football, and we got week 9 NFL reactions. Thank you guys so much for supporting this series. I really do appreciate it. If you are new, make sure to check the link in the description for the full playlist. I'll make sure of that is over there, and you can click on that to see every single video so that you're all caught up, and you also have future videos on the playlist when I post them. And also make sure to hit that red subscribe button. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss a single video. And make sure to smash that like button. And without further ado, yeah, it was a rough week for me. 8-7. Yeah, week 9 was a very rough week, but the good news is I'm still above 500. Very, very far away from that. Anyways, let's go to the games. Kicking things off this week, we got the Thursday Night Football matchup where the Houston Texans got upset by the New York Jets 21-13. Takeaways from this game: number 1, CJ Stroud has definitely regressed from his rookie season. Number 2, New York Jets. Yeah, their fans have a lot of false hope even with this win. Guys, you're 3-6. You should not be talking trash at all. You shouldn't be talking shit. And number 3, I remember there was like that one play where one of the Jets players dropped the ball before reaching the end zone. Can these coaches tell the players to drop the ball when they're 5 yards at least past the end zone? I'm sick and tired of players dropping the ball before the end zone. 1, it's annoying. 2, it's stupid. And 3, it's just humiliating for you and your team and your fans. CJ Stroud had a very shaky game with 11 of 30, 190 yards, no touchdowns or picks. Joe Mixon led the way for the offense. He got 106 yards rushing on 4 yards to carry and the only score offensively. And I'm not kidding when I say that only 3 receivers even showed up for this game, or at least locked in a catch. Tank Dell led the way with 6 catches, 126 yards. When you got 3 players locking in catches, the only 3 players on that receiving core, there is a problem. And 2 sacks for Danico Autry, but they could not force a single turnover. Oh wait, they forced a fumble, but it didn't even matter because they lost the game. Anyways, for the Jets, Aaron Rodgers had a very solid game. I hate saying that because I do not like his guts at all. 22 of 32, 211 yards and 3 touchdowns on the day. Breece Hall led the way in rushing with 5 yards to carry and 74 yards. Devontae Adams got his first touchdown as a Jet with 7 catches, 91 yards and a touchdown. He led the way in receiving yards. Garrett Wilson also had 9 catches, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I bet fantasy owners are very, very happy. I would say Breece Hall fans, or the fantasy owners, they're pretty mid about it. What I mean is that they have mixed feelings about it. It wasn't good, but it wasn't bad either. But man, I guess Houston's offensive line was completely terrible because the Jets defense got 8 sacks, including Michael Clemens and Jamin Sherwood getting 2 sacks each. Quentin Williams also had 1.5 sacks. And I know you already know who was the one that lost the fumble. Freaking 14. What's his name? Malachi Coley? Yep, he dropped the ball before the end zone. That proves my point. Please tell these players to drop the ball only when they're 5 yards past the end zone. Like, come on, man. This was definitely Houston's worst loss this season because they did play 2 great NFC North teams. But Jets, this was a big win to get your momentum back. But can you keep it going? That's going to be the big question that's going to be answered next week. Kicking off the Sunday 1 o'clock slate, we had the Saints getting upset by Carolina 23-22. What? The only big takeaway from this game is that the Saints are fallen off the face of the earth. They have completely fell apart. 1, Dennis Allen got fired. And 2, Marshall Lattimore got traded to the Commanders. Wow. That makes me feel a lot better as a Falcons fan because we have to play these guys in New Orleans next week. Yardage-wise, it wasn't a bad game for the Saints. Like, Derek Carr didn't really do terribly. 240 yards, 18 of 31, and a touchdown pass. Alvin Kamara having 5 yards to carry and 155 yards, with Taysom Hill getting the only rushing touchdown of the game. Oh yeah, and Alvin Kamara also had 6 catches for 60 yards, so pretty much he had 35 touches and got 200 yards off of it. Crazy stuff. Foster Moreau got the only touchdown of the game as well, through the air. Only 1 sack and an interception by Shamar Jean-Charles. Man, this was just terrible. Like, I was not expecting this from the Saints defense, but they completely fell apart. Just sad to see, after Drew Brees leaves, this team slowly falls from grace. It's just really sad, but I enjoy it. This was Bryce Young's first win as a starter this season. He had a pretty mid-game, 16-26, 170 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. My main man on the Panthers, Chuba Hubbard, got 70 yards, 4.8 yards a carry, and 2 rushing touchdowns on the game. The lead receiver was Jatavian Sanders, who had 4 catches for 87 yards, with Xavier Leggett having the only touchdown through the air. I have heard rumors that Adam Thielen is going to be traded once he's healthy, but he's probably not going to play next week. The Panthers are playing in Germany next week against the Giants. Yeah, that's going to be a stinker. Defense really could not stop the run game, but Charles Harris did get an interception. It was just Carolina just was able to squeak by. I think the Saints treated this game like they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when Hank Stram was their coach. Hank Stram, a very good mic'd up guy as a head coach back then. And also another thing, New Orleans is dead last in the NFC South because of this loss. Tough break. Next up, we got the Commanders squeaking by the New York Giants, 27-22. Daniel Jones, I could say, is a little inconsistent. There's one game where he does really well, and one game where he starts underthrowing and overthrowing his targets. Like, yeah, you don't know what Daniel Jones you're going to get. At least to this game, he was actually playing well. Starting with the Commanders, Jaden Daniels had 15-22 for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns on the day. Chris Rodriguez led the rushing game with 52 yards and 4.7 yards, with the only touchdown on the ground going to Austin Eckler. Noah Brown, the hero from last week's game against the Bears, got 5 catches to 60 yards, leading the receiving yards in the core, but the only 2 touchdowns in the game through the air went to Scary Terry McLaurin. And no interceptions forced, but there were 2 sacks, both by Dante Fowler in this game. So you're telling me Dante Fowler is actually a pretty decent pass rusher? I would say so. As far as Daniel Jones, like I said before, he did really well. 20-26 for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. And he also added a touchdown on the ground as well, despite Tyrone Tracy getting 4 yards to carry and 66 yards. Defenses did not come to play at all. It was really just which offense had the ball last and who would score more points. It ended up being Washington. Malik Neighbors led the receiving with 9 catches for 59 yards, but the only 2 touchdowns went to Theo Johnson at the end of the game and also Chris Manhertz earlier in the game. And when I said that the defenses did not show up besides Dante Fowler, I meant that. Like, nobody showed up on defense, like, besides what I just said. Like, come on now. Offensive shootout, kind of, was won by the Commanders. That was a very scary win, but Washington is still first place in the NFC East. That's really all that matters in this league. Up next, we had the Dolphins losing to the Bills on a last-second field goal with 5 seconds remaining, 30-27. Dolphins still don't have a defense. And the Bills are still owning the Dolphins. Like, I don't think the Dolphins have won all but 1 or 2 games in the last decade or something. I didn't really fact check that, but it's been a long time since the Miami has beaten Buffalo. Tua had a very solid game with 25-28, 230 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. Devon Achane had 63 rushing yards and a score. Achane and Mostert combined for almost 120 yards. Oh yeah, and the other touchdown was Devon Achane getting a receiving touchdown, so he had 2 touchdowns this game. And welcome back Tyreek Hill, getting 4 catches for 80 yards, but also Jalen Waddle had a touchdown. But I gotta ask, Jalen Waddle, what went through your mind on that screen pass? Because you went the wrong way on one play. What are you doing? Only 1 second interception in this game. Jalen Ramsey got an interception because the Buffalo receiver handed it to him. And there was also Chop Robinson getting a sack, the only sack of the game. Welcome to the NFL, Chop. Josh Allen had a very impressive game as well. 25-39 for 235 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Rushing game, horrible. And that's when Ray Davis got a 63-yard reception. That's why he led the team in receiving with 2 catches, 70 yards, and a score, with the other 2 touchdowns going to Mac Hollins and Quentin Morris. I was not expecting any of those 3 players to get a touchdown. Did not have that on my bingo card. No interceptions for us, but a sack by Greg Rousseau, and Dorian Williams and DeMar Hamlin continued to hold it down on the tackling part. They did really well. As far as tackling goes, and DeMar Hamlin has had a good season. The 2-headed monster at running back and the passing to Tua Tagovailoa just wasn't enough to beat Buffalo. They got swept this season. And now the Dolphins are behind the Jets. Yep, your season is fried, Miami. Next up, we got the Chargers dismantling the Browns 27-10. I enjoyed this game because 2 players on my fantasy team from the Chargers went off this game. Chargers offense is back to scoring points again, and Jameis Winston had a Jameis game. Yep, sad. Justin Herbert had a very solid game, 18-27, 280 yards and 2 touchdowns, with J.K. Dobbins having 6 yards a carry, 85 yards, and 2 touchdowns in the game. That was one of the players I had on my fantasy team. I'm currently trying to get this guy on waivers, but Quentin Johnston had a solid game on the receiving end. He had a really good game, 4 catches, 118 yards, and a score, with the other touchdown going to Josh Palmer. And this was the other part of the fantasy team that I had. The Chargers defense got 6 sacks, 3 interceptions, and a blocked kick. 3 interceptions by Gilman, Still, and Molden. 2.5 sacks for Tui Peloto. 2 sacks for Fox, and even 1 for Khalil Mack. Poor Jameis, man. 1 touchdown, he got sacked 6 times, and he threw 3 picks, 26 of 46. Why are you making Jameis throw 46 times? 230 yards. I guess the reason is because the rushing game was terrible. Cedric Tillman continues to impress in the receiving core of the Browns, 6 catches for 75 yards and a score, but Jerry Jeudy also had 7 catches for 73. Really impressive stats for Jeudy. 6 sacks the other way as well, including 3 from Myles Garrett. He is still him. He's just on a bad team. Yeah, Browns, you need to free Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward immediately. They do not deserve to be on a bad team like y'all. Browns are just not giving the fans anything to cheer about. And the Chargers, good win. Hope you guys can be a playoff contender still, even though you're 3rd in the AFC West. Actually, you're 2nd because the Broncos lost. Technically. Next up, we had the little barn burner between the Patriots and Titans that went to overtime, with Titans getting the interception to end the game, 20-17. Now, this is what I like to call a tank bowl. Drake May still has a lot of experience to get under his belt before he could become a true NFL quarterback. In Tennessee, you have some stars, but you need a serious NFL quarterback. You need to start tanking for one because, man, it is not working out. Drake May, unfortunately, threw 2 picks, had a touchdown, 200 yards, but he also led the team in rushing with 95 yards. That is despite Ramondre Stevenson having a score. Oh yeah, Ramondre Stevenson had both of the touchdowns, 1 on the ground and 1 through the air, with Hunter Henry leading the receiving yards with 7 catches for 56. 1 sack and an interception in this game. The sack was by Deatrick Wise and the interception by Jelani Tavai. Other than that, they just could not stop anything that moves on the Titans. Mason Rudolph had a pretty respectable game, 240 yards, 20 of 33, 2 touchdowns and an interception, and Tony Pollard, 4.6 yards to carry, but he had 128 yards on the day. Calvin Ridley led the receiving, no surprise here, 5 catches for 73 yards, but the 2 touchdowns went to Nick Vanette, Esper Kakini got the other touchdown. There were 4 sacks in this game by the Titans defense, and both interceptions were by Amani Hooker, including the one in overtime that sealed a Titan win. Promise me we will never speak of this game again. How we feeling, Scooter Magruder? Cowboys lose to the Falcons in Atlanta, 27-21. We had this wrapped up, even though the Cowboys scored a touchdown late. By then it was already too late. And now you don't have Dak Prescott for a couple weeks, probably. I'm hoping CeeDee Lamb's okay, though. He had an AC joint injury to his shoulder, and he is expected to play Philly next week. Obviously, like I said before, Dak Prescott went down with an injury. I believe it was a hamstring. And Cooper Rush and him combined had 31 of 49 for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns between the two quarterbacks. Rico Dowdle had 6 yards to carry for 75 yards, but other than that, the rushing game was not exciting. My two boys, Jake Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb, had 15 catches and 120 yards between the two, but no touchdowns. Those went to Rico Dowdle on through the air and Jalen Tolbert at the end of the fourth quarter, near the end of there. There were 2 sacks by Carl Lawson, but that was basically it. There was nothing else exciting for Dallas' defense whatsoever. They need Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence back. Captain Kirk had a very spectacular game, 220 yards. I would say respectable though. 19 of 24, 220 yards, 3 touchdowns all through the air. Bijan had a solid game with 86 yards, 4.5 yards carry, but Algier also scored a touchdown. And after an amazing breakout game by Kyle Pitts, he goes to have 1 catch. We need to start using him more, through the receiving core. We need to give him more touches. But anyways, Darnell Mooney led the way in receiving with 5 catches, 88 yards with the score, with McLeod and London having the other 2 touchdowns. No interceptions for us, but we did get 3 sacks on the day. Very impressive game for Falcons on both sides. It's just Dallas just scored a touchdown late to make the score respectable. That was literally all it was. Tell Scooter, do you want to talk about it? Because I would love to talk about them boys. And now we are 2 games ahead of Tampa Bay in the NFC South. It's never been sweeter. Up next, we had the Raiders getting dismantled by the Bengals 41-24. Damn. One, the Raiders season is just already lost. I think it's time to call the season in Las Vegas. And number 2, Cincinnati is the best 4-5 team there. I'm not actually sure what happened to Minshew. I don't know if he got benched or he got hurt or something, but Desmond Ridder came in and threw a touchdown. The 2 quarterbacks combined for 21-33 for 200 yards, with Desmond Ridder throwing the only touchdown through the air. Rushing game was terrible, besides the Samir White touchdown nonsense. Jacoby Myers, I had him starting this week, and he had me 8 catches for 105 yards, so pretty impressive stat line for him, with the touchdown going to Brock Bowers, the only one through the air. I don't think anyone's surprised at this point that Brock Bowers is literally the one guy that can get you points on that receiving core of the Raiders. And sometimes Jacoby. Only 1 sack by the Raiders defense, and then the interception for a touchdown by Jack Jones. I think Jack Jones is just the guy who will make 1 big play per game and then just disappear for the rest of it. But let me tell you, Joe Burrow came to play. 27-39, 250 yards, 5 touchdowns, and an interception. I benched Chase Brown. Thinking about it, I probably should have played him, but then again, I still won my fantasy game by 70 points, so it's all good. Chase Brown got himself 120 yards on 4 yards of carry, and he even added a receiving touchdown to that. But then Mike Gesicki, 5 catches, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jamar Chase had 7 catches, no touchdowns. But then Gesicki stepped up, along with, like I said, Chase Brown. Andre Receivas and Drew Sample had the other touchdowns. No interceptions forced by the Bengals defense, but my God, Trey Hendrickson gets 4 sacks in this game. He is so him. I could say that Hendrickson is elite. I still have the Bengals making the playoffs, so let's not get too ahead of ourselves and say that Cincinnati's season's a lost cause. Bengals are making the playoffs. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Or maybe they're 7 or 8 seed. Who knows? Only time will tell. And to end the 1 o'clock slate for Sunday, we had the Broncos getting dismantled by the Ravens 41-10. Wow. Besides the second quarter, Broncos laid a goose egg in the rest of the quarters. Sad. You can't overhype a team that literally wins because of either a team's mental mistakes or the fact that they just have more talent than the other team. Neither of those things went the Broncos' way, and the Ravens just stomped a mud hole in the Broncos. Bo Nix did not have a good time passing the ball, 19-33, 220 yards and a pick, but he did catch a touchdown this game. Unfortunately for the Broncos, rushing game was just abysmal. Cortland Sutton threw the touchdown to Bo Nix, and he also caught 7 balls for 120 yards in this game. One sack by John Franklin Myers, but the moral of this game for the defense is that they just could not stop Derrick Henry whatsoever. Or Lamar Jackson for that matter. Speaking of which, Lamar had 16 of 19 for 280 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. Wow. He didn't even have to run that much because Derrick Henry had 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's the king for a reason. And Zay Flowers had himself a very impressive game. 5 catches, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, with the other touchdown going to Pat Ricard, the fullback. And Mark Andrews had a disappointing outing with only 2 catches this game. Sad. You still think Mark Andrews is back, guys? 4 sacks and an interception by Ardarius Washington in this game for the Ravens. Tavius Robinson got 2 sacks. That's an interesting name I haven't heard. This was just a dominant showing for Baltimore on both sides of the ball. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They are one of the best teams in the AFC, and it really shows. Kicking off the 4 o'clock slate, we got the Bears being beat by the Cardinals 29-9. And no, this is not a scoregami. 1, Bears got a long way to go before they could be considered elite. And 2, Arizona is still there. Kyler Murray is the reason why that team is winning games. I hate to say it, but he does win games. For as little as he is, he can play some ball. I can tell you that. There was really no touchdowns on offense for Chicago. Caleb Williams had a pretty shaky game, I guess. 22 of 41 for 220 yards. Rushing game went about down to earth. DeAndre Swift had himself an off game again. Rome Odunze is back to leading the receiving corps. 5 catches, 100 yards on the day. And DJ Moore, 4 catches for only 33 yards is not going to make fantasy owners very happy about that one. 3 sacks on Kyler Murray, but unfortunately they just couldn't stop them whatsoever, and they also allowed a safety as well. Sure, Kyler Murray had 13-20 for 154 yards, no touchdowns, but the run game got 3 touchdowns for Demercado, Trey Benson, and Trey McBride as a tight end. What? And don't forget James Conner's 107 yards with 6 yards a carry. Yeah, that set him up well. Receiving core was very diverse, and no real players really shined over the other. And for the Cardinals defense, I counted 6 sacks, including 2 for Zaven Collins. So welcome back, Zaven Collins. I'm glad you started showing your full potential today, on Sunday, excuse me. Not much to say except the Cardinals are still here. They're not going anywhere. And they're still leading the NFC West. What has this division become? Next up, we got the Jaguars almost coming back against the Philadelphia Eagles 28-23. Ouch. Heartbreaker for Jacksonville, but you should have seen this coming. Eagles wanted to choke, and then Jacksonville said, nope, you take that win. We don't want it. Trevor Lawrence, passing-wise, terrible. 170 yards, 16-31, 2 picks. Rushing-wise, he had only 2 touchdowns in the game, and rushing game was non-existent, besides Trevor Lawrence getting both of those touchdowns. Again, with this receiving core, nobody really outshined the other, with Evan Engram having 5 catches for 45 yards. 3 sacks for Jacksonville, 2 for Josh Hines-Allen, and there was also a fumble return for a touchdown, returned by Trayvon Walker off a Saquon fumble. Trayvon is still here! As for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts had himself a very solid game. 18-24, 230 yards with 2 touchdowns through the air, and he even got one on the ground. Besides the fumble, Saquon had a very impressive game on the ground. 160 yards on 6 yards a carry and a score. Oh yeah, and Saquon also had a receiving touchdown, along with Devontae Smith, who had 4 catches for 87 yards as well. Sucks to be A.J. Brown fantasy owner because he logged in 2 total catches this game. Sad. 2 sacks for Josh Sweat and 2 interceptions, one by Zach Bond and one at the end of the 4th quarter, pretty much, by Nakobe Dean. He got the interception that pretty much sealed the game for the Eagles to get another big win. Wait, big win? This was against the Jaguars! Don't play like this when you go against Dallas now. They might beat you if you play like that on defense. Next up, we got the Rams beating the Seahawks in overtime. Another overtime game, 26-20. It looks like Geno's magical run has come to an end from what I've seen right now. He's just inconsistently good now, or bad. He was bad this game. And also heard that Puka Nakua got ejected from this game. Sad. Matt Stafford had 300 yards on 25 of 44 passing, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Kyrie Williams' touchdown streak came to an end with only 69 yards on 3 yards a carry. Wow. Cooper Kupp led the receiving corps with 11 catches for 104 yards. Impressive stat line for him, but Demarcus Robinson came up clutch with 6 catches for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns, including the one that won the game for the Rams. 6 sacks for the Rams defense and also 3 interceptions in this game. Wow. Braden Fisk had 2 sacks. Jared Verse continues to be one of the best defensive rookies in this league. And a name that nobody has even heard of until this game, Cameron Kinchins returned 2 interceptions. One of them was for a touchdown. Safe to say that Kinchins really read Geno Smith every time he picked him off. And Geno had a very Brett Favre kind of game. 3 touchdowns, 3 picks on 360 yards passing. Kenneth Walker had an okay game for his stats, 83 rushing yards, unfortunately 3 yards to carry as well. But Jackson Smith-Njigba was the player of the game in that offensive core. 7 catches, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns for him, with the other touchdown going to Tyler Lockett. And also, DK did not play in this game. He didn't play at all. That might have been the reason why Seattle lost this game. But then again, Geno had himself a Brett Favre game, so I guess those turnovers really hurt them more. And the only thing positive for Seattle's defense was that Tariq Woolen got an interception. The unlikely hero for the Rams was the defense, most certainly, and also Demarcus Robinson. Great win, Ram. And the final game of the Sunday 4 o'clock slate was the Lions against the Packers, with the Lions coming out on top 24-14. Did not see that coming. I gotta be honest with ya, I was not expecting Detroit to go into Lambeau and actually prove that they are the best team in the NFC, but here we are. Jared Goff had himself a pretty solid game. Of course, he was being safe with the football every single game now. 18 of 22 for 150 yards and a touchdown. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs combined for 28 carries for 140 yards with about 5 yards to carry, and Jahmyr Gibbs had himself a rushing touchdown. And of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown led the way receiving with 7 catches for 56 yards and the only score through the air. No sacks for Detroit, but Kirby Joseph had a pick 6 in this game. That was the other touchdown for the Lions. And yikes, Jordan Love, a shaky game for the most part. 270 yards, 23 of 39, and an interception in this game. Sad. Emmanuel Wilson scored a touchdown, but Josh Jacobs also had 7 yards to carry with 95 yards. 2 running backs with 7 yards to carry? Wow. I'm going to be honest, Green Bay, you should have ran the ball more with how well these running core absolutely did. And Jaden Reed, no surprise here, led the way receiving with 5 catches, 113 yards. He was a clutch player, but it just wasn't enough. Only 1 sack in this game for Green Bay's defense, but the moral of the story was that they could not stop a single bit of Detroit's offense. They couldn't stop it at all. Like I said, Detroit is the team to beat in the NFC. Try beating them. Well, they will probably eventually, but yeah, this was a great game for Detroit, even without Aiden Hutchinson. And now we have come to the Sunday night football game where the Vikings edged out the Colts 21-13. Dang. 1, Flacco's magic might be over. 2, the Vikings are still here. Joe Flacco's passing, pretty shaky. 180 yards, a pick, 16-27, and the rushing game, horrible. I hate to say it in Indianapolis, but your rushing game, even with Jonathan Taylor, is just not helping the situation. And also Josh Downs led the way in receiving with 6 catches for 60 yards. This is literally despite the Colts having 4 sacks, including 2 from Grover Stewart, and also 2 interceptions by Nick Cross and Zaire Franklin, and also add in E.J. Speed's impressive tackling. You got the trio of big suspects on the Colts defense that are just going off right now, at least for the season. Rushing game was mid, but Sam Darnold had himself a pretty solid game, 28-34 for 290 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Somehow, Justin Jefferson did not get a touchdown this game, even though he had 7 catches for 137 yards. Touchdowns went to Josh Oliver, Jordan Addison, and Jalen Naylor, like literally every other starting target besides Jefferson. 3 sacks for the Vikings defense, including 2 for Greenard and an interception by Byron Murphy. Oh yeah, and I also forgot to mention Kenny Moore returned a fumble for a touchdown for the Colts. And I really thought Indianapolis had it. If Joe Flacco would have played a lot better than he did, he would have definitely beaten Minnesota. But nope. Minnesota is still here, and they are still rolling. And this is a game that I actually watched on streaming service. I would check that site out for all sorts of games. You don't have to watch just football games. You can watch basketball, baseball, hockey. You can watch anything. Anyways, Monday Night Football. Chiefs win in overtime against Tampa Bay, 30-24. Kansas City, how in the hell did you let Tampa Bay, without their two best receivers, take you to overtime? Their expected standouts had some solid games, but the defense did not come out to play at all. Baker Mayfield, pretty solid game. 200 yards, 23 of 31, and 2 touchdowns on the day. Rushing game, besides the Rachaad White touchdown, was just absolute horrid, non-existent. Someone had to step up in the receiving corps, and last night it was Cade Otton. 8 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown. And there was Ryan Miller who had a touchdown. It was not Scotty Miller. It was Ryan Miller who had that touchdown. That was the one that forced overtime to begin with. And Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey both had 2 sacks each. The 2 pass rushers that were expected to perform, they did. Patrick Mahomes, very impressive game. I'm trying not to glaze, but when you have a stat line like his, 34-44, 290 yards, 3 touchdowns, it's hard to glaze him. To not glaze him. Kareem Hunt had the game-winning rushing touchdown along with his 106 yards with 4 carry. Kelsey and DeAndre Hopkins had themselves a game. Kelsey with 14 catches and 100 yards, very expected among Swifties and also Travis Kelsey fantasy owners. And Hopkins had 8 catches for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. Welcome to the Chiefs, DeAndre. And Samaje Perine had a touchdown as well, because why not? And yeah, besides the 2 sacks for the Chiefs defense, they did not come out to play whatsoever. Rushing game, they were very solid, but they allowed Baker Mayfield to force overtime without his 2 best weapons. This is now the 14th straight game that Kansas City has won. 14 straight? We're reaching... I can't think of anything right now. Because someone just please end this already. Chiefs are just not even deserving to win right now. Whether it's their offense or their defense, they don't deserve these wins. Oh yeah, and I also forgot to mention about Buffalo. Tyler Bass had a 61-yarder to win the game with 5 seconds left against Miami. Absolute props to him. And Titans, yeah, I hope you're happy now. You just gave Kansas City a guy who now had 2 touchdowns on Monday Night Football. Great job. And that is going to do it for this episode of Grizzly Talks Football. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you smash that like button, hit the red subscribe button, make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss a single video. Until next time, I will see you guys later. Peace!